computer. Hi, everybody. Today, I've already forgotten. Michelle, what's the title?
So today we are asking ourselves, this is day 2 of our mini series this week, talking all around mental health and the stigma around mental health. And today we're asking ourselves the question, what is my relationship with mental health?
So what is my relationship with mental health? And again, it's just going from what Michelle said, what we wanted to do this week is come to you for 5 days, quickly for 10 or 15 minutes to keep the conversation going around Mental Health Awareness Week and Mental Awareness Month, because mental health, as we know, it's 365 days of the year, maybe more for some people who might have a little bit more other issues with mental health and time problems, which may be one of my problems. Is what I'm running out of time already. Guys, Melissa, I know that especially in your job and your job previous to this as a frontline social worker, you've seen many different facets of mental well-being and mental health. Can you explain a little bit about what you've seen, but also again about how it reflects in you and your journey?
Thanks, Nick, for that question you did not prepare me for. I think what is important, I believe, to understand is that when we talk about mental health and a relationship to it, that feels like a lot better than thinking of it something externally that we have no kind of control over or no interaction with. I think the idea of having a relationship with the health of our well-being, or just our health in general, allows us to kind of dance the dance with it and see it as a partner. And this is the piece. They're not things that our experience of mental health, let's say, is not because there's something wrong with us. It's always because something has happened to us. And whether that happened to us is chemical rewiring in our brain, or trauma from a young age, or abuse or grief that's been unprocessed, doesn't matter. It's what has happened to us, rather than it being this narrative that something must be wrong with us, that there's this assumption that there's a right or wrong way to do the dance. And really, it's not that way. It's just about finding. I'm just going to end it there because I'm going to go with that dance analogy, and that these analogies I can go off with. But I think so. Yeah, not what's wrong with you, but what's happened to you, and then how you respond to it based on how you respond to it. So I'll just leave that there.
Michelle, how about you? How does the different phases of mental health come up in your life and also in the life of people who are close to you?
I've been really close to people that have had very deep experiences and very sort of harrowing experiences in their lives, and I have, as we all have, and it's shown up so different for everybody. And one of the main stigmas around this is if somebody's got a mental health issue, which is how it's kind of advertised. We love putting a label on something, putting it in a box and putting it on the shelf, right? So you've got mental health, you've got bipolar, you've got this disorder, and they're called disorders or disease. And it's like you automatically socially want to disengage with that. And then when you go through something that's similar, you don't want to be judged the same way you've judged somebody else. So this horrible cycle and loops happens. And I've seen that play out with so many people. And sometimes when I'm going through something, especially in the past when I was much younger, didn't want to open up about it because you don't want to be judged for being not strong, or these kinds of things. I remember when I was 10, my dad died when I was 10 years old, and going back into school and thinking that all these kids are going to look at me like there's something wrong with me stopped me from, all I could do was cry. That's all I did for about 2 weeks when I went back to school, was just cry. I remember I was in year 5, I remember sitting in class and all I did was cry, and every time I cried or I was upset, I was taken out of the classroom. And the teachers did the best that they could do with a 10-year-old kid that had just lost her dad. But I didn't want to be taken out of the classroom and sat in the first aid room on my own, allowed to cry by myself. I wanted a hug. I wanted a cuddle. I wanted some connection. I just wanted to release, but somebody else to be there and be there with me while I was going through all of that on my own. And I think people forget that you shouldn't just sit in a corner to be, deal with it all on your own. And it doesn't have to be that extreme. It doesn't have to be a death of somebody. It can just be an emotion that comes up in you. It doesn't have to be a situation like that.
It's so curious to know that when there's things that are present, like tears, we're so uncomfortable with tears as a society, I think sometimes. And like our first response is like remove the thing, not like what are the tears telling me? Like what are the tears trying to express? It's like take out and remove. Like that seems our function, which is, I mean, adds to more of the, like the distress and the thinking that there must be something wrong with me. Like there's something inside of me that's broken, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think that, through talking to some people in the past, and also Melissa, about when we cry when we're children, and how, like in the sporting world, you're told that there's no crying in that sport. But yet, as children, our brains are malleable, they're growing, they're like sponges. We have an enlarged amygdala, which is where with the emotion our center, where we cry from. And it's like you telling a child not to cry is denying the person their mechanisms to deal with their mental capacities of what they're dealing with at the time. So in a way, we're suppressing the thing that is actually going to be making us feel better, and then we have to develop other mechanisms to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
It's a release, right? When you cry, how many times, I know this happens to me regular basis, I cry and I feel so much better afterwards. I can't tell you how much better I feel when I've had a good cry, when that's come up. And it's a cleansing process, right? And it's especially in a work environment or even in a social environment, it still feels almost taboo. And I'm quite comfortable crying in public places or wherever, but there's still, you can still feel people watching you, and you can still feel the awkwardness around when somebody else is actually not even just crying, but emotional.
Like, to really answer the question, if you ask somebody how they're doing, are you really ready to hold their answer, which is like, I'm not good, man. I remember when my dog died 4 years ago, when Luna died, I was like riding my bike down the street in Toronto, just bawling, and like also like pausing to go pet a random dog. Like, anyway, and people would ask me like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm not for 1 second. I can never be okay. Like, I'm not okay. And they didn't know how to hold my pain, I guess, my grief. And maybe this is the example I'm going with for some reason, but it is that idea of like, can we get in the practice of when we ask somebody, how are you? And they are truthful with us, can we hold it? And then vice versa, can we let ourselves be truthful to answer the how are you really? Like, really, how are you? So I think that's always a curious little like test, like, how are you really? And then see what happens there, because it requires both parties to be really present with their own feelings and their own security, and also like to not have an answer. We don't have to have it the right word. Sometimes we never have the right word. Sometimes it's just the silence of like, oh, that is a nightmare and it sucks, but I'm right here beside you in it. That's all we could do, right? Is pull each other back from the ledge or be that lighthouse, all them things.
I think what Mel, what you've always said to me is that we're our own experts in our own experiences and our own mental health, and all we can do is support people through the journey of discovering what their relationship with mental health is. Because my relationship with mental health, Michelle, thank you for talking about when you were a child and showing that vulnerability. Because I know for me, it was being very young and not having the voice or the way to deal with traumas. And then we develop ways to deal with our mental health, which end up not serving us, and they're also pretty detrimental at the time. For me, it was like, manipulation and stealing and lying like all the time. But what I know now is I was just actually trying to protect my mental health because I was just so scared of life. And I think that's the thing, is that we're on a journey with a relationship with our mental health. And I think it's something that, for me, it's something I really embrace because it's just like physical health. It's just like my relationship with food, which right now is not very good. And it's just like my relationship with going to the gym, which right now isn't very good. I've got this relationship with understanding what my thoughts are and how they manifest itself in its feelings, and also the words that I use.
I think the idea is that, or what we need to be reminded of sometimes from ourselves and from others, is that it's just on a spectrum. Like, that's it. We're just always on a spectrum, and some days we're tipping over, and then some days we're tipping on the other side, and some days we're balanced, and some days it's a little bit of both. There's no like finite way to have an experience of anything, right? And that's not, it's just more about the holistic approach of health, of wellness, of well-being in general, and our relationships to all the things that impact it, that influence it, that interrupt it, all these kind of things. It's like we're just on a spectrum, and today looks like this for me, and not even today, this hour looks like this. I don't know what the next hour is going to look like, but I'm open to what it
Here-
might look like.
Here's a thought to both of you as we're kind of wrapping up our time, but how about the words that we use around mental health? Because Michelle, at the beginning, you talk about the way that we use disorders, and disuse, and all the kind of wrong, not wrong, what disease, and Mel, like, the language more. Can you explain a little bit what I'm trying to get to here? Which is how we can use really harsh language, can't we, towards it?
Yeah, well, this is twofold. First of all, disease is really interesting if we break it down, right? It's just dis and ease. So when we have a disease, or there's just something that's not balanced, not aligned. And I don't mean that to simplify, there's just something. So I just want to say that out loud. But I think at the same time, there's sometimes comfort in having a name for something, especially when you sometimes go your whole life not knowing what things are. And then you're like, oh, that's depression. And for me, depression looks like this. Or in my case, when I was like 20 years ago, when I had that paralysis, and then they said, well, that's MS. I was like, okay, so I knew how to work within the framework. And then I changed my own definition and my own relationship to my symptoms, because I just saw them as an expression of something else inside. So there's like, sometimes we can find comfort in having a name. And then the flip side of that, we could get stuck in that name. So I think that's, or the definition of that thing. So I think there's this thing where we get to really, again, honor the relationship of whatever is happening, and then the way it expresses itself. So if we see it as dis-ease, then we could figure out, well, how do we invite in ease and comfort and peace, or like some sort of settlement of the pain? Michelle, any thoughts? Sorry, I'm like, I don't want to keep going.
No, that's so true. I so resonate with that. And it's knowing that that doesn't define you. So right. It's so easy to get into the patterns. I know we're talking more about patterns tomorrow, but it's so easy to get into the pattern of the way that the doctor might say it, the way that mum might say it, dad might say it, your brother might say it, your sister, whoever. It's so easy to get into that pattern of what you might read on the internet. And it's so strict and harsh, but that doesn't define you or how you deal with it. You've just beautifully said about how you dealt with your medical situation, and you can redefine it. You can come up with your own way of wanting to treat that, and you don't have to fall into a victim of, you're not on the back foot. When you go into these patterns or these different things that act out, you're not on the back foot, and you can completely flip it around. And that's an awareness thing.
So in a nutshell, my relationship with mental health is that it's mine, it's personal to me, and I'm on a journey with it, and that I have people in my life to support me. And also I choose to use kinder language around the diseases that I had. If people were to say alcoholism, I would just say alcohol use, and instead of a disorder or misuse. And I've learned that from Melissa, so thank you. So that's my little bit in a nutshell. You guys, and then we can wrap up.
I just think we all have relationships with everything around us, and sometimes they're a bit more problematic than others. And when they are, then we could sit and figure out how to make them less problematic. It's essentially that. Like, there's nothing wrong. It's just what's happened and how we respond to it based on our body memory, our narratives we tell ourselves, all these kind of different things. So it's changing, it's evolving, and we get to decide how we want to engage with it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to echo both of what you said, and just honoring how you feel in that moment. Just honoring the truth of that moment and what it means to you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Our time is up for our little chat today. And tomorrow we are going to be continuing our chats around mental well-being. Who's going to say what tomorrow's subject is? Because I don't know.
Tomorrow is about, now you can see patterns that appear in your life with how this acts out, how mental awareness acts out, or how your behaviors act out, and then ways or how to start thinking about breaking those patterns if they're not working for you.
Oh, I'll be able to talk about that for the whole 15 minutes. You guys don't need to show up.
There we go.
Thanks, everybody. We'll
Yeah.
see you tomorrow. Is it a different time tomorrow, Michelle?
It's at 3 o'clock tomorrow, yes.
3 o'clock. Okay, thanks, everybody. We hope to see you then. Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.